Chris, good morning to you. Now, Chris, don't look too serious here. I'm just saying, when you think of your age, you're a different generation than me, a different generation than Isabel. We're sort of all stacked in a row here. Do you remember sex education at school, and did anybody teach you about the vulva? I thought a vulva was a car. I thought it was an estate car.
Yeah, you know what? I have pretty much no recollection of being taught any of that. I did end up going to a boys' grammar school, so maybe that had something to do with it, maybe.
Well, it hasn't held you back too much, has it? I'm sure. But we're asking you this because sex education, the guidelines are going to change. This will be welcome news to a lot of parents. Can you just explain to us exactly when these changes will come in and why it's taken so long for the government to wake up to this? Because it's been on your watch, hasn't it, that a lot of political ideology has been forced down the throats of many state schools, and schools have been afraid, and indeed parents have been afraid to question anything. So when will the changes come in, and why has it taken you so long to make these changes?
Well, I think the report is due to come out very shortly. I'm sure that the Education Secretary will then move to make the changes quickly. And look, as a parent as well, I don't want my children, to be honest, to be exposed to inappropriate content at a pretty young age. And nor do I want politically contested ideas like the trans issues being taught as if they're facts. I think childhood is a really special time, and I don't think we need to introduce some of these ideas too early. So I think the changes that are likely to come are going to be very welcome. And as I say, I know the Education Secretary will get on and do them as quickly as possible. And as a parent, I'm strongly welcome that.
Chris, you're also tackling knife crime, and it's an interesting thing. There's a cash injection here, which I don't think is the really important thing. I think the important thing is how you're actually approaching this, the technology that you're introducing, and the idea that how you're going to revolutionise how you identify knife crime and tackle it. Tell us more.
Well, we're investing in a lot more technology. Today's funding is only a very small part of that. And the kind of technology that can make an enormous difference includes things like knife scanning technology. I was seeing a demonstration just yesterday in the Home Office of a handheld scanning device being developed by an American company, which could be ready to deploy on the streets experimentally this year, that would enable officers to, at a distance, scan people as they're walking down the street to see if they are carrying a knife. That could have an enormous impact on public safety. We're also investing in rolling out live facial recognition and retrospective facial recognition. This is where, for example, we've been trying it in Croydon, actually, which is the borough that I represent in Parliament, setting up cameras in Croydon Town Centre. We've got a list of people who are wanted for criminal offences, including knife crime offences, violence, drug supply, even offences including rape. And as people walk down the street, you can scan them. If they're not on the watch list, which would apply, I hope, to you and to me and the vast majority of people, the image is immediately and automatically deleted. But if they are on the watch list, if they are wanted for a criminal offence, then it's the officer operating the camera is alerted, they get pulled over. In Croydon, in the last 3 or 4 months alone, over 100 people have been arrested who would not otherwise have been caught, including for knife-related offences. So this sort of technology, knife scanning, live facial recognition, has the potential to completely transform the way that we can keep the public safe and catch a lot more criminals. And that's why we're investing very heavily in it. And I'm personally really pushing it and making sure that police are adopting it.
Are you? Because I feel as though that sounds like you're describing a little bit of a sort of Big Brother situation where people's faces are going to be scanned and bodies are going to be scanned from afar. I mean, that just personally makes me feel quite uncomfortable. Wouldn't it be more sensible to bring back talk about knife amnesties or a sensible conversation about not letting underage kids onto social media where the vast majority of these swords and other weapons are being purchased?
Well, let's take each point in turn. So I don't think these are kind of Big Brother measures. Look, I mean, just scanning someone at a distance to see if they're carrying a knife is a completely reasonable thing to do. In terms of the facial recognition, if someone like you or me, one hopes, is not on the watch list, then your picture is immediately and automatically deleted. And let me give you an example of someone that got caught in Croydon using this. There was someone who had been was wanted for a double rape, the first of which occurred in 2017. So they hadn't been caught for 7 years until the man walked past the camera and got identified. Now that's obviously that hasn't gone to court yet, but that is someone wanted for a double rape who would not have been caught but has now been caught. And if all that has to happen to do that is you and me get scanned and our picture then gets immediately and automatically deleted, I think that makes public safety a lot better. So I think it does strike the right balance. There are all kinds of safeguards around the accuracy and so on. There's some court cases that sort of set out the limits and how you can use it to make sure privacy is respected. But it really is working, and it's going to keep the public and it's going to keep you and me and our families a lot safer.
Well,
now, your second question was about online.
Okay. Carry on.
Well, I mean, in Croydon, in an experimental deployment, 100 arrests have been made in the last few months alone, since January, and those are 100 people, often dangerous criminals, including that wanted rapist, people who've committed knife offences, drugs offences, firearms offences. They would not have been arrested otherwise, and they now have been.
What if the people who are being stopped, who are being searched, who are being arrested over these sort of things, fit the wrong profile? If it's all... you know how badly derided stop and search was. I mean, I speak from a point of view that stop and search is an obvious tactic to me. Being from Northern Ireland, you knew exactly where the trouble was coming from. You knew exactly who was carrying, who was likely to be carrying weapons, explosives, whatever. So those areas, stop and search existed. Oh, my goodness me. It created uproar. Even though that's where the trouble was coming from, you had to pretend it wasn't coming from. Now, you're going to face exactly the same problem here.
Well, actually, the algorithm that does the facial recognition matching has been tested by the National Physical Laboratory, and there is no racial bias in the system, at the setting that the police use it at, and it's incredibly accurate. I mean, the false positive rate, where it says that this is the wanted person, but it turns out when you actually ask them for their ID that they're actually not the wanted person, it's 1 in 6,000, and actually which is much better than a police officer using their own judgment. And the only person in the Croydon trial that was wrongly identified was the twin brother of the wanted person. So it's very accurate. I do, by the way, also support dramatically increasing physical stop and search as well. But you asked me a question about online knife sales, which I didn't answer a couple of minutes ago. So the Online Safety Act is going to be coming fully into force shortly, and that will essentially require social media companies like Facebook and so on
can't rely on them
to take steps to prevent. Well, no, they'll be legally required now for the first time to not sell knives, for example, to under 18s. You're right, we can't rely on them. That's why we've legislated. And if they break those rules, they can be fined 10%.
They're just going to build that into their business models. It's peanuts to them. They can afford these fines. I really do think it would just be safer to ban phones for under 16s. Just really quickly, though, when you're trying to paint a picture of a party of law and order, it staggers and is beyond belief to me that you're releasing violent criminals out onto the street ahead of the end of their sentences, because our prisons are full up. It's all well and good if all of this technology works and you've got nowhere to send them.
Well, sentences are getting longer. For example, rape sentences now are about 2 years longer than they were under Labour. We're arresting more and more criminals. The police are doing their job, catching record numbers of criminals. We've got more people in prison than we have ever had. Well, some people are getting released a few days early. I mean, if somebody gets released a few days before the end of a 5-year sentence, that's a relatively, it's only, we're talking about a few days here, nothing more than that. And
70 days,
because
90
the police
days.
are now being successful. So it's because the police are being successful in arresting more and more criminals and putting them behind bars. And as I say, sentences now are significantly longer than they were under the last Labour government. And there are more people in prison today than there have ever been.